Hey y'all, just a quick reminder that if you like what I do here, then liking, commenting, and subscribing are all great ways to help support the channel. And if you know anyone that might like what I do, then sharing is always appreciated. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the story. Homo ex Machina, an original short story by Charlie C.C. Thomas. Year APD 0671. Body E Station 2, Philemon Station. Location, docking arm D25, habitation ring 4. Vessel, Dormir LG Quantero ferry class. Route, leaving Venusian Oracle Station to refuel at Philemon Station and dock at Jove Sol L3 Kepler Station. Alex stared ahead, diagnostics streaming across his bionic eyes as he sat upright in his seat, strapped with belts across his chest and hips. Implants were green, bionics were green, most importantly though, cargo was green, each marked with a flashing check mark. He blinked with lenses to banish the optic hologram and adjust to the seating bay. It was the third of 4 and 500 square feet. Rows of barely cushioned chairs lined the floor back to back with a single armrest between each. Above them, in concentric stacks, more seats sat, back to back and bottom to bottom, so some looked upside down, all supported by supposedly reinforced beams. Hardly anyone had boarded that bay, the very reason Alex had, but the few people who were there proved entertaining enough to pass the time as the ferry recharged outside Philemon Station. Near the ceiling, a mother fussed with her son. Alex zoomed in on them and used his lip-reading software to generate voices in his neural implants. She was exacerbated, pulling his long black hair back into a bun so it wouldn't float into his face in zero-G. He couldn't tell where they were from originally, maybe the Soul Belt, but there was no way to know which archipelago. The son rolled dark eyes but sat still and let his mother groom him. A moment later, a man coasted between the rows, gently pulling himself until he climbed to the top and strapped in beside the boy. Alex didn't smile. He just zoomed out and found the empty row in front of his. He craned his neck left and right down the equally empty seats, then sighed through his nose at the itch on his throat. He lifted a bionic hand and dragged the smart fiber pads across his skin, the material adjusting to drag but not tear the skin, until it was gone. He looked down at himself and smirked at the glint of polished metal bones surrounded by bionic muscle fiber, everything below his ribs, everything past his shoulders, and the rest of him was littered with knights and implants. The real him. There wasn't much left of his old self, just enough to feed his brain, but he'd have all that replaced too, if it were legal. But artificial brains had been banned for centuries, too close to AI. He scowled and set a hand reflexively on his stomach, lifting the tattered shirt to touch the muscle fibers, arranged like a skinless man. He swallowed, subconsciously petting the place where the belly button would be, the place where the hard drive was hidden. He pulled his hand away quickly and carefully looked around, finding the family near the top, a lone child in the back, an old couple to his right. No one noticed. No one suspected. He looked down, then back up before he pursed full lips and unbuckled from his seat, lightly pushing off the ground to float hundreds of feet into the air, his torn and hole-filled black shirt pulled down with the force of it. He spun and caught a chair, the shirt riding up into his armpits and exposing his muscled chest before he pushed to an exit shaft in the sidewall. He coasted inside, catching himself with mechanical digits that flared wide and nimble from hand and foot alike. Then he crawled into the shaft, using the rungs of the metal ladder to propel for hundreds of feet until it opened on a corridor facing seating bay 2. He glided out through the light crowd of people, their clothes tight to their bodies or buttoned in place, short hair stiff in weightlessness and long braided or slicked back against their skulls. They clanked as they walked, mag souls keeping them fixed to the floor instead of swimming through a cloud of bodies and suffering from the inevitable vertigo. He glided into the hall and activated his mag souls, built into his feet, walking between the people as they headed to their seats in Bay 2. They thinned as he went until there were only a few dozen people visible. He pulled up the ferry's schematics on his eyes and followed the rest of the hall to a series of doors labeled bathrooms, men's on one side, women's on the other. He grinned, resisting the urge to look between his legs for the flesh that wasn't there, and pressed into the men's room, a compartment of rows of hundreds of stalls walled off from one another with mirrors and sanitation bars between them. He walked past the central row for the one furthest left, disengaging his mag souls to fly overhead the few men coming and going. A few he had to weave around, tall and slender, born and raised in 0G. He found the first open stall and pressed himself against the wall, accessing motor control and deactivating nerve fibers to open his stomach when the door was shut. He watched the gray and black muscle tense and pull open down the center, exposing his interior cavity. Sterling skeleton glinting in the line bar at the crease of the ceiling. His secondary brain, a series of silicon and metallic discs suspended from a ring of false ribs and connected to his nanite-reinforced spine, glittered black, almost wet. And fixed to one of the lobe discs was a plate, pinching a simple, archaic hard drive no bigger than a thumbnail, but more important than anything in the system. He reached inside and held his hand in front of it, using satellite sensors to read the drive. Nothing was wrong. The crystalline matrix beneath the shell was intact. The AI was safe. He closed himself and reactivated his bionic nervous system before standing in front of a mirror amid the walkway and running padded palms over his olive-shaved scalp. The skin, the jawline, the organic muscle was still left over, but the swiveling scopes of biotic eyes, silicon flesh surrounding the circuits and digital lenses, the adapters poking under the skin where flesh met machine, that was him. That was the real him. Beneath the sinew and bone, there was something better, something immortal.
Just a little longer,
he thought.
And we can stop hiding. The AI is supposed to rule, and we're supposed to be AI. No matter how long it takes, we'll surpass the flesh of the past.
He looked down to his stomach and the shirt pillowed around him, then back to his reflection before the sanitizing hand pockets. He wondered what would happen if he plugged the drive into his second brain. Would it inhabit part of him, completely dismantle his mind, incorporate him into its? Then he smirked and pictured the elders on Kepler Station as he walked up to them, the AI, their messiah to a golden age of technology and prosperity. He could see them fall to their faces and give platitudes. He chuckled, but the smile faded when he found the reflection of his stomach. There'd be no jokes. He could see the complex simplicity of the new world, the efficiency, the incorporation of man and machine serving each other. He could see the rest of his flesh falling away and leaving a metal skeleton dressed in gray muscle, a silicon brain, one with the AI.
You'll change the world,
he said aloud.
But not yet.
He left the way he'd come and stopped at the captain's loud voice on the intercom, chuckling and gravelly as he announced everyone to strap in for an unplanned speedy departure before the authorities arrived to ask about the fake ID codes he gave the Philemon docs. Alex sighed and swam through the lateral shaft, pushing into Bay 4 and sitting in the first row he found. Another man followed behind him, half frantic as he pushed off the ground and missed the back of Alex's seat. The man spun and would have floated into the next row if Alex hadn't shot out a hand and took his wrist, guiding him to the seat beside. Not 5 seconds after he buckled in, the ferry jerked sideways and shot back, crushing everyone into their seats or belts, depending on how they sat. They raced like that for a while, but eventually slowed into a steady drive. The man let out a groan and peeled clawed hands off the armrest with a chuckle, turning to Alex and offering his hand. He even met his eye. "Thank you," the man said, hazel eyes glittering and brown hair pulled back into a bun. "If you hadn't caught me, I'd be painting the floor." Alex hesitantly took the man's hand and shook, holding his eye.
No problem.
The man's face didn't change at the artificial drone of Alex's voice. "So where are you from?" "I can't really tell. with all your mods. If Alex were biological, he would have stiffened. Instead, he kept calm but alert, opting to redirect.
I grew up all over Venus. You're from the North Stations.
The man nodded, retracting his hand as he swiveled to face Alex better, black bodysuit swelling around him where it wasn't buckled tight. I am that. How'd you guess?
The accent.
The man smiled like Alex had told a joke, sun-kissed skin wrinkling around his face, making him look 40. That obvious, eh? No, it's surprising actually. Not many people can hear the difference between Northies and Scuts.
It's nothing like a scut.
And what about you? I can't place your accent. The man chuckled to himself, but Alex didn't smile, forgetting himself.
I was born on Caesar Station a while ago. Moved around a lot without any parents.
Orphan, eh? Oh, we got plenty of those in the North Stations. When were you born? Alex looked him up and down, grateful his bionic nervous system didn't allow physical reaction to emotion. He resisted the urge to lick his lips and held the man's face, making his own stern but not threatening.
In 571.
Oh, you're just a kid. Not even past a century. Wait till you hit 300. That's when things get interesting. The man breathed a half-hearted laugh and reclined in his seat as much as he could in 0G. I was born back in 240. Alex raised an eyebrow.
You survived the Demeters then.
I did. Never got to see old Earth, though. It was slag long before I was born. Ended up moving around a lot and just never left Venus. Took up the accent after 50 years. Had a lot of jobs, too. The man lifted his eyebrows and looked into Alex's eyes. What did you do? I know it's not easy for cyborgs in some jobs, but were you a miner? I hear it's better for you a lot, what with less need for suits.
You ask a lot of questions. You ever a cop?
Alex said, trying for a light-hearted expression. His voice didn't match it. The man ignored it and smiled. No, son, never actually. But it's a long time to get to Kepler from Philemon this time of year. Might as well make conversation, yeah? So, what did you do? Alex sat straight, as always, thanks to his artificial back.
I did a lot of maintenance work. I'm good with instruments, if you couldn't tell.
He looked down. Though he didn't smile, the edge of his expression softened. Well, you never know. How long have you been a cyborg, if you don't mind?
70 years. But I'm not a cyborg.
The man nodded with a knowing expression. Trans-techie, eh? Alex gave him a questioning expression. Oh, it doesn't bother me, son. I've seen all types. Most people are just people, even if we disagree.
So, you don't think I have corpodysphoria? That I don't hate my body and want to cut off as much of it as I can?
It was almost light-hearted, but there was enough seriousness in his voice, too. The man held up a hand gently with a patient expression. It wouldn't surprise me if you did, but I'm not saying that's what it is. Having your entire body feel alien and wanting to be a machine might give you the same outcome, but it doesn't mean you hate your body. Alex stopped and watched him, the flitter in his cybernetic heart settling.
Then what do you think?
I don't know. Actually, there's a lot I don't know, and I doubt either of us can say why every trans tech does what they do, but why don't you tell me why you did it? The man sat there with a patient, kind face, fingers laced over his stomach. Alex didn't know what to say. He hadn't thought about it in decades. It was just who he was now. I mean, if I can ask. I understand gene mods. They're mostly reversible, so you can grow out of them without giving up too much. But going this route, he gestured to Alex. It's permanent, irreversible, and the cost of regrowing a limb, let alone a body, especially right now.
I didn't even think about that when I had my legs taken.
Alex said with a chuckle.
Because it wasn't about me being wrong. We have to move forward. And the only way that makes sense is this.
He set his hand over the drive in his stomach.
We have to adapt or we'll die. I'd rather give up my flesh than die.
But what if you are wrong? What if we can adapt without having to forsake everything we know makes us human?
AIs have emotions. Anyone who's studied or seen the war knows that. We could transfer our minds and be done. No need to chop or cut anymore.
He sighed and let his hand slide over his knee, fiber on metal.
If it weren't for these laws,
What if AI only knows how to act like it feels? What if you plug in your mind and find yourself missing something on the other side? Maybe we need a little flesh and blood.
maybe you're wrong.
Alex shrugged, the words considerate.
Maybe flesh is obsolete. Maybe emotions are something we should leave behind with the rest.
The man let his eyes drift down as he nodded and pursed his lips, grinning sadly. Or maybe the aches of our flesh are too much to bear. Maybe replacing flesh with steel and plastic is the closest thing to armor we have to shield against it. Alex stared as the man held his gaze to the floor, his brows furrowed, lips parting as he wondered what to say. It wasn't true. There was nothing good in the body, and technology was the only way forward. It was survival, evolution, it was the natural progression. He didn't need armor. He needed to be better.
I'm not looking for armor. It's perfection.
Is that why you use that voice? Alex furrowed his brows. You can choose your voice. It sounds like anyone, so why sound like an intercom?
Because
Alex grinned, never having to put it in words before.
it feels more like my voice. What it should. What I want it to be.
Could I hear what you sounded like before? Alex chuckled with furrowed brows. I was just curious. Thought maybe I'd hear a Northy accent after all. Alex breathed a laugh and flicked between the man and the row in front of them. Then he accessed his vocal synthesizer and modified it to his natural voice.
Here. I told you. No accent.
The man smiled wide and met his face. Drat.
Have you heard enough now?
He asked in the same voice, questioning whether it really was his or a stranger's now. Have you? Because I think that right there is perfection. The man smiled kindly, cheeks pinching as Alex stared, brows slowly unknitting as something deep in his chest relaxed. Don't change that, son. If for nothing else, then to remember where you came from. A little piece of biology, in case your transferred consciousness can't remember what it's like. Alex watched him, hand on his stomach over the drive, mouth agape as that thing in his chest unraveled. He grinned and chuckled, tension in his neck falling away as he nodded and smiled a frown.
All right.
He continued in his natural voice.
Maybe I will. But just remember.
The man smiled wide and held out his hand. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Alexandrios. Alex.
Alex. Wonderful. Nice to properly meet you, Alex. The name's John Henderson. The flight from Philemon to Kepler was 10 hours, one side of the solar system to the other, even with a certified fusion engine. But the Dormir's fuel was no doubt cut. 20 hours into the flight, Alex had left Mr. Henderson. He was pleasant company, but the man talked too much and it was steering Alex off track. He had a mission. He'd sent updates to his contact in the leadership, first to report the integrity of the cargo and second to report the delay in arrival, and received confirmation and orders. But the third, fourth, and fifth reports were met with silence. He'd checked the destination each time, made sure the signal was surrounded by interference that looked like background noise, made sure to encode the key pattern for his contact to identify. No reply. Now, 22 hours into the flight, the captain announced their arrival and commencement of docking procedures, but Alex still hadn't heard a reply. He strapped into a random seat on the bottom bay, completely empty, and breathed. He knew protocol. He was to proceed as planned with the cargo and divert to a safe house if the area was compromised. No one suspected him. The AI would be safe. It would be safe. Once docked with the B station, Alex swam weightless up the shafts among the masses, tying his baggy t-shirt into a knot on his waist to keep it from catching. He moved through the crowd, everyone magnetized to the floor, and crossed the docking bridge, repressing the urge to look out the windows to the massive, top-shaped station built from materials mined in the belt itself. He grinned despite himself, catching sight of the large gold statues, muscular men on the equator upholding the gap of the docking ring littered with smaller vessels. The crowd moved through customs, keeping him for a moment to scan his systems for any malware and his blood for any contaminants before finally letting him enter the maze of halls and passages of the outer layer. But when it opened, the space beyond was large, with 20-story buildings jutting from the walls, and roads and streets between them like retro Earth suburbia or the outskirts of a metropolis. Grass and trees grew around the sidewalks and from the walls behind the buildings, stretching up to the ceiling, which was just another street with more people magnetically bound to that plane. Kepler, like most B stations, didn't use spin gravity to save on fuel and labor. It meant everyone was a little taller, a little thinner, and either kept their hair close to scalp, cut short, or shaved. Living in the belt meant more dangerous jobs too, so cybernetic limbs and implants were common enough from injury. They were cheaper than regrowing the limb. Alex almost fit in. He walked with the crowd, ignoring the call of vendors leaping between the overhead and lower streets for customers as he activated his transponder. He sent a pre-typed message telling the contact of his arrival as he turned off the magsols and coasted over the street to avoid light traffic, like everyone else. He walked to the local park, a large, squat sphere covered with paths between grass and trees, all winding along the smooth walls with a large light tethered to the center by cables. He wandered to the base of one and contemplated pushing up into the air to get closer. Hundreds of people had launched across the park to coast weightlessly to the other side, so they didn't have to walk. He wouldn't be out of place. He decided against it, instead going to task. He pulled up the local maps and found the rendezvous point, highlighting the best route from his location and grinning. It was on the other side of the park. He deactivated his magsols and crouched, aiming around the center light and launching through the air with enough force to make the grass wave around him. He shot through the air, arms angled behind and legs straight, turning into a living arrow as fans along his spine helped him avoid the cables and fly. He smiled to himself as he rounded the central lamp and diverted slightly left, tucking his legs in and blasting the fans to lessen his impact. He landed in a crouch beside the concrete walkway, feet and hands sinking into the earth, with grains of dirt and grass hovering around him before he propelled forward with his hands and hovered out of the park. He followed the route through the streets, slowly becoming more industrial before the inevitable megacity at its heart, until he came to the street outside the rendezvous point. A crowd of people blocked it off, above and below, even filling the empty space between. He stayed on the ground, lightly pushing past people until he could look through them to the police barrier. Cops, native and outsider, were fixed to the streets and the walls of buildings by magsols, green uniforms for those with weapons, yellow for investigators further in the distance. "Cops are everywhere," a man said to him from beside. Alex kept his face forward, but broadened his scopes until he could see the man. His limbs were cybernetic muscle over steel bones, but the rest was covered in rippling muscle and black tattoos. "You should take it elsewhere."
What's that, friend?
He asked, switching out of his natural voice. "Take the cargo away. They can't get it." Then a message appeared across Alex's vision, telling him to follow the man. The stranger turned and pushed up away from the crowd, coasting to the street overhead. Alex stared at the cops swarming the place, telling people to get back and beginning to expand their perimeter. Then he turned and followed the stranger, tucking in his legs and softly magnetizing to the overhead street, though he supposed that was relative. "Follow, and I'll explain," the man said, already walking away down another street, black shorts fitted tight to keep from ballooning, his only clothing. Alex followed him for 20 minutes, wordlessly, as they turned another street and tucked into a shadowed alley between two shops. They faced one another, backs to opposite walls, and spoke by transmitting audio into the other's nights to avoid being overheard.
Who are you?
I'm the senior hand of Elder Shun. Was. I had been on an errand when you reported the delay in transport. Alex crossed his arms, but relaxed. If he knew that much, he'd either be involved or a spy.
What happened?
After your second report, the elders were ambushed. The police swarmed them. Some died. Most were captured. I escaped because I was on task elsewhere when it happened.
How?
Alex stepped forward, face contorted in confusion and anger. I suspect a mole, but I don't know who. There were others on task the same time as me, so not everyone was captured. Possibly one of them, or perhaps they were captured to save face. I simply don't know. Alex sighed and looked up, arms coming to his sides as he stared at the people on the street above them.
What now? Do we find the others and regroup to a safe house?
No, they know protocol. Hopefully they've left already. I stayed behind to wait for you if you came and warn you. Together we'll leave, but first, the drive. I need to know if the cargo's safe. Alex held his hand over his exposed stomach with a nod.
It's safe. No one suspects.
Show me. I need to be sure of it, brother. Alex watched him. There were no changes to his expression beyond concern, no sweat, no dilated pupils, no sense of urgency beyond what's to be expected. He sighed with another nod, then accessed his musculature, opening his abdomen into a vertical slit to expose his second brain, the fusion battery glowing from the floor of his pelvic anchor point. The man stood straight and stared inside, then sighed with relief, smiling and nodding as he took Alex by both shoulders. He was short, his bald head glistening in the lights. Alex wondered if the stereotype of Martians was really true. His vision flickered. Alex furrowed his brows as his cybernetic muscles twitched and spasmed. He gasped as his back locked and went limp, his limbs flailing as he tried to push away and glare down on the man, but his artificial parts died, even the mag souls, leaving him to float where he stood with his stomach open and the AI naked to the air as he looked around. He opened his mouth, but the words were strained, barely there before his voice synthesizer failed.
What did you do?
The man reached inside Alex with a blank face. Simple little arrest virus courtesy of the Kepler police force. Makes chasing people with cyber limbs a lot easier. Alex's face went hot and red as he tried to scream, and all that came out was breath. His vision glitched again and the color faded to black and white. I used to believe them, you know. And maybe cybernetics is the only path forward, but bringing back the AI? It tried to overthrow us. Billions of people died in that war, brother. Alex's face fumed, his chest and throat spasming as his vision doubled and turned to grainy static. I'm not letting anyone put this thing back into the world. We're going to destroy every copy. Every copy. Then we'll finally be free.